Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Do it.
A team that has clinched its division title. It would have clinched whether they won or lost on Sunday against the Colts, because when the Browns lost, that gave it to the Steelers. They will be resting key starters. At a minimum, we know about quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. There may be others. Let's hear from Mike Tomlin talking about going to face their arch rival Cleveland Browns with, at a minimum, Ben Roethlisberger not playing.
One bye available in this single elimination tournament. We're not going to be that team. We made that bid, so we're prepared to lay in it. That's the most significant variable for us. And so that being said, given an opportunity to airmail a player or two to the postseason, we will. Ben will not be playing this week. We'll turn toward Mason Rudolph and our young quarterback positional group and give those guys an opportunity. We'll look potentially at resting some other guys in terms of making them inactive, but the number of those guys and who those guys are will be determined as we push through the week. Make no mistake about it, it does not change our intentions in terms of going to Cleveland this weekend. Football is our game. Our job is winning. We intend to do our job. We intend to prepare with that mindset and ultimately let our play lead us to that destination. We're not seeking comfort. We're not grading ourselves on the curve. This game is on the schedule, and so the guys that will be on the field will represent us, and the standard that is the Pittsburgh Steelers will be the standard.
I have a hard time reconciling the back end of what he said with the front end. Don't tell me that you're going to play to win if you're not putting your best players on the field. There's a strategic reason for you not to put your best players on the field, and I understand that you're not going to tell those guys to go out there and lay down. But if you're truly trying to win the game, you're using your best players.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Tough needle for Mike Tomlin to thread there, Chris.
Yeah, well, he's trying to keep, the pedal to the metal a little bit about the urgency in the building, and we're still trying to, big picture, win something here, and it doesn't mean that we just, take the week off from practice and do anything like that. I don't, but you're right. It's hard to sell that to your team totally, but as you know, in the NFL, guys get their opportunity. They don't know anything different than let's go 100% and try to win that game. Now, it is going to be backups, like you said, but I can't. I mean, I don't know, Mike. What do you think here with Pittsburgh? For the Pittsburgh Steelers, for this team, what they've had to endure this year, it makes sense. Yes, sit Big Ben all the way. I would say sit. I said on Monday, I thought maybe the offense comes out and does something there. Okay, that's fine. The defense is what I'm concerned about. I want them to sit. They're the team. They're the unit on the Steelers that needs to be really special come playoff time and help out an offense that we're not so sure is really consistently good right now. So I understand that. And, I know you and I have talked before too. It's a Steelers team that's been through a lot, and their front seven on defense plays the whole damn game. They got to be exhausted. They got to need, a little time off here. I would do that if I was Mike Tomlin.
Mentally and physically, because they never had a bye week this year. Week 4 became their bye unexpectedly. They were preparing to face the Titans that week, so they practiced as if they were going to play. That game didn't happen. It got moved to Week 7, which was their actual bye week, so bye-bye to the bye week. And then when Thanksgiving rolls around and you think you're going to get a mini-bye on the back end of the Thanksgiving night game against the Ravens, that goes bye-bye as well, because 6 days later they finally played the Ravens. So they've constantly been in football mode. They've constantly been in preparing for the next game mode, even when the next game doesn't happen. So there's a mental aspect to it that I think is important.
Definitely.
With Ben, there's an injury aspect, even though when you look at the last 3 weeks of the injury reports, there's nothing on there by way of injury, and I don't know what's true and what's not true. But obviously he could use a game where he's not in uniform. And that was one of the keys to me for Tomlin. He was talking about other guys that may be inactive. That tells me that Roethlisberger won't even be dressed in a uniform. He will have clothes on the sideline. But the idea that T.J. Watt, do you put him in a uniform and tell him just stay there on the sideline? You almost have to keep some of those guys out of pads and no helmet in sight to keep them off of the field. And you can't just kind of partially have them there. It's all or it's nothing for a lot of those guys, which makes them great. So there's only so many guys on the roster who can be inactive. It makes you wonder how many of those defensive starters will end up not in uniform. And the ones who are in uniform, are they going to be happy standing around in uniform for 3 hours in Cleveland?
No, probably not, especially if they're not going to play. But that's just what they're going to have to deal with. I'm sure there's going to be a certain amount of players that, they dress up, they go through warm-ups, they play maybe the first 2-3 series of the game, they might be out. Then you're just sitting there with a jacket on, and, you're jealous of the guys who are in street clothes, certainly. But, man, when it comes to, Cam Hayward, T.J. Watt, Stephon Tuitt, Alou on the front, I mean, those guys, I'm resting them. And if they are playing, it's very limited snaps, maybe just to get out there, get going for a little bit, and then get them out of the football game. I'd be too worried of something happening. And like you've pointed out, with the COVID-19, everything like that, the mental, physical gymnastics they've had to go through, I feel like they've been a little bit of a worn-out football team. They need a little recharge.
Is it enough, though, for the Steelers to kind of throw the hay in the barn and slam the door and say, we'll open it up again, wild card round, based on one half of good football? Is that one half? Now, it triggered euphoria in the locker room with the T-shirts and the hats. We talked about that the other day.
Right.
And, of course, at least I'm wearing green today if they decide to put the Grinch back up. But it's a real thing. They didn't demonstrate conclusively and convincingly that they fixed their problems. They just woke up for less than a half of football. Is that enough for them to confidently say, we'll be ready to go when the wild card rolls around?
I don't, they're going to tell themselves yes. But I don't know if I'm sold on it. That's why on Monday's show, we talked about it. I came out and I said, I don't know, this might be one of those things where maybe you do come out and play Week 17 just to get out there and kind of capitalize on the momentum a little bit. One more opportunity to go, okay, we are back. We feel good. Let's go. All right, we're ready for the playoffs. But I feel like, they came to the conclusion that the risk was not worth the reward at that point, and that they saw enough, and Big Ben's health and feeling 100% for the wild card game is more important than, the things we're mentioning. And I'll say this too, Mike, because for my podcast today, I'm going back a little bit and watching the matchups of these playoff game implications, right? And I watched the Browns-Steelers game from Week 6, I believe it was. There, you could tell Big Ben from watching that, after watching what I saw last weekend, is not moving the same. There's definitely a lower leg issue. There's no doubt about that. The last few games, how he stands in the pocket, just flat-footed as can be, doesn't move at all. Not that he's been moving a ton this year, but when I turned that game on, I went, oh, wait, he is moving a little bit within the pocket here, and definitely more than he has the last few weeks. So, I think there is something there and something to keep an eye on.
And I doubt that a week off is going to make him any better. It's just a question of avoiding making it worse. There have been reports of serious concerns about the knees, a hyperextended knee suffered in Week 13. But again, it was after Week 13 where he disappears from the injury report except for his perfunctory Wednesday off that is not injury-related. And there's no mention of knee Week 14, 15, 16, or presumably Week 17. We'll see, because today's the day that we get our first look at the injury reports for all of the games on Sunday, because all of the games this week are on Sunday. We'll get all the injury reports today, and we'll see who's healthy and who's not healthy and whether or not Big Ben lands on that injury report. Now, the Steelers could be strategically and deliberately conceding the 3 seed versus the 2 seed. They take the 3. They give the 2 to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean as much this year. Remember what T.J. Watt told me on Sunday. They still have a hard time creating energy. They have to create it from within in that empty stadium. So does it really matter if you're playing the Bills in the divisional round, if that's how it shakes out, if both teams win in the wild card round and it's Steelers at Bills versus Bills at Steelers? Does it really matter whether they're hosting that game or going to Buffalo? Now, you don't want to travel if you don't have to, but Chris, if the Bills are able to have 6,700 fans present, that plan has been submitted. A decision on whether or not they can have fans present for the playoff games is imminent. That's still energy, even if it's negative energy. You've talked about how visiting players feed off of the hatred that they feel coming from it's still something to get you going. Sure. I don't know. Maybe from the Steelers' perspective, they looked at it and said, for what we gain by potentially being the 2 seed, it's not worth what we potentially lose by declining to give some of our key players a break heading into a postseason.
I think that's fair. I think that's exactly what it is, Mike. If you made me guess, you're right. I mean, it's just, again, it's another risk-reward factor that they're not willing to gamble with that risk. And the reward isn't, in a year like this, that big of a deal to be at home as the 2 seed. You know, if it does play out the way where, okay, Buffalo, you know, somehow, well, it will play out that way either way. But yes, I don't think it's a big deal. The only thing that's different, all right, at all, is, hey, there is an advantage to playing at home and being home. There's no doubt about that. Is it some huge advantage? No. But if you gave me a choice as a football player in my prime right now to go back and play whatever it is, if you told me I could play a home game or an away game, I'm going to pick a home game. Yes, I'd like to, you know, be in the environment that I'm comfortable in. And there is something to that, but not such a great advantage to where you're going to go, well, we're going to play week 17 and we're a banged-up football team, but we're still going to play, you know, just to get the 2 seed in a year where, you know, like you said, it's not a ton of fans and it's not a big difference.
Well, especially if you're going to undermine your ability to get to the divisional round where you would be hosting the 3 seed versus going on the road as the 3 seed. If you can't get there because your team is too beat up.
Exactly.
As the Baltimore Ravens, for example, come to town, if you get the 2 seed. See, there's so many moving parts as to who's going to be in what seed in the AFC that it's hard to deliberately avoid someone because you really don't know. There's still a roll of the dice. You may wake up Monday morning, hey, we're the 3 seed. We've avoided the Ravens. Oh, crap, they're the 6 seed. And now we still have to play them. I think at some level, even though they would never admit it, that's a game that the Steelers would love to avoid if they can.
Well, listen, this is where I was going to go because I know we're going to talk about, you know, Sean McDermott and the Bills here in a second, but we might as well just include it in this conversation. I'm dead serious with this. Like, if I'm the Buffalo Bills, I'm doing anything I can. I'm scoreboard watching this weekend. I'm doing anything I can not to have to play the Baltimore Ravens. That would be the Baltimore Ravens, to me, if you're the Buffalo Bills, that's like the worst team they could see. I wouldn't want to deal with them. I would, I think, to a degree, try to avoid them the best I can. Like you said, there's no guarantee of anything. You know, we don't know how this is going to play out. I don't know, like, how it could all play out to where Baltimore can jump around between the 5, 6, and 7 seed. I mean, it doesn't look like, you know, I don't know. So you're right. You don't know how to play that. But I do think that would be a scary matchup for, yes, the Steelers, even the Buffalo Bills. Man, you got to play them, that running, you know, offense with Lamar Jackson. And, of course, that secondary, even if you're Josh Allen and all them, that's a little daunting. And that would cross my mind if I'm McDermott this week preparing for this one.
And a lot of those pieces are going to be unfolding at the same time. The early games include Steelers at Browns, Ravens at Bengals, and Dolphins at Bills. The 4:25 window has the Colts hosting the Jaguars and the Titans at the Texans. So the picture is going to be incomplete in the 1 o'clock window. You need an analytics expert just to help you understand where you're going. Are you the 2 seed? Are you 2 seed? Who are you likely to face? 3 seed? Who are you likely to face? And it could be that the Bills are trying to concede the 2 seed. The Steelers are trying to concede the 2 seed. If the Steelers lose, the 2 seed is Buffalo's win or lose against the Miami Dolphins. And Sean McDermott has said they're going to keep their plans internal for what they do on Sunday. I believe that given everything the Bills have accomplished the past 5 weeks, and Micah Hyde said yesterday the Hail Mary play sparked them, and they had that week off. They had to stew on it for 14 days before they played again. They've won by double digits minimum every week since then. They've won 86-28 combined score their last 2 games. I would keep riding it. I would keep letting it fly.
I'm with you.
I would keep, and especially if you can avoid having to face a division rival in the postseason. You don't want to mess with the Dolphins in the postseason. It's been a long time since they've played them. The Dolphins are a lot better than they were when the Dolphins gave the Bills a pretty good game back in week 2. 27-17, I think, was the final score, although I could be wrong. I'll just act like I'm right. What the hell? I think it was 27-17, though. But you don't want to see them again in the wild card round. You don't want that. You don't want to see them again at all. You would rather, well, although I know you think the Ravens are a bad matchup, I just think there's something psychological about a division rival coming into your building in the playoffs that you'd like to avoid it if you can. And I just think that they need to continue to ride this wave that shows everyone that they're for real. They need to convince themselves they're for real and convince everyone else they're for real as they head into the playoffs so they're not one and done again. I think that's so much of why we've seen what we've seen recently. They are desperate to show everyone and themselves they're not a team that just punches a ticket to the playoffs and then punches out.
No, I think you're right, and I think you're right. They're a young team. They're just capitalizing on momentum and being a consistent football team and being one of the best teams in football. And in that conversation, I'm with you. If I'm Buffalo, I'm riding the momentum. I'm not letting us have a week off right now. Again, they had a late bye week this year. They should be a fairly fresh football team. They had a lot of guys get healthy really in the last 6 or 7 weeks too, to where they didn't have to deal with the wear and tear of the early part of the season. So I would think they're somewhat of a fresh football team. And, yeah, I wouldn't want to let my foot off the gas pedal. I really feel like, hey, more times than not, the great teams, the great playoff teams we've seen in history, whether that's the team that's had to, fight their way into the playoffs and have been playing playoff games all through December, or that number 1 or 2 seed that we've seen in the past who's had to play through December to make sure they're a number 1 or 2 seed, those always seem to be the teams that capitalize playoff time. That always. So that would scare me. And the other thing I would throw into this little thing here is, I'd want to play, capitalize on the momentum like you said, keep that going. I'd want to beat the Dolphins one more time. And then within beating the Dolphins, I think there, again, you'll increase your chances to where we expect Baltimore to beat Cincinnati. Baltimore will be a higher seed. You'll be a higher seed because you win and you avoid them. I'd be more worried again about Baltimore than I am Miami. You tell me, wait, you have a chance to have Tua and the Miami Dolphins coming into town, or Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens? I'm sorry. I love the Dolphins and what Brian Flores is doing, but I'm going to pick them all day long. I'll take Tua and the Dolphins. Sorry. I don't want to deal with that other team. And that might be their best way. Just like what you're saying. Just pedal to the metal and go.
By the way, the score in week 2 was 31-28. Dolphins losing to the Bills. I was misfiling in my brain the week 1 score between the Bills and the Jets, 27-17. So right church, wrong pew. For that 27-17 score. Thank you, Pete, for clearing that up for me. Here's another reason to knock out the Dolphins. Whatever it is that they're cooking up that feels special, especially after the game last Saturday night with the Raiders and the twisted head and the throw and the win. And, if you can knock them out of the playoffs, you kind of, not that you're going to completely kill it, but you at least slow down this growth of something with the Dolphins that may be getting out of control, and now next year you've got a real issue with the Dolphins in your division. If you can spray cold water all over this thing that they're putting together, maybe it helps you next year too. If they get to the playoffs, maybe they have a hell of a lot more confidence next year and they're more of a problem for you next year. So there's an added benefit to delivering an uppercut that knocks them out of the playoffs, Chris. And as you said, if it means the Ravens have a higher spot and you don't see them right out of the gates, all the more reason to take advantage of the opportunity to beat the Dolphins. And look, let's just simplify it. Your team is playing extremely well. Keep playing extremely well. Keep doing what you're doing. We hear, the cliches we hear from coaches all the time, don't reside in your fears, is one that I think makes a ton of sense, especially this week, because we've seen teams time and again, most recently the Ravens last year, when they took their foot off the gas, they rested guys week 17, then they have a bye, then it's 3 weeks between games, and then in come the Titans, who just beat the Patriots. They catch you flat-footed, and the next thing you know, you're done. I think you want to keep going, and now you need to be ready to stand up and answer the tough questions. If Josh Allen or someone else get injured in a meaningless game, you need to be willing to say, look, we've seen time and again what happens to teams that deliberately surrender their momentum.
Right.
And we were not going to deliberately surrender our momentum.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're going to have to be able to answer those questions, certainly. But we saw.
But that's the answer. That's it. I mean, they act like they're afraid. Oh, they're going to go crazy if somebody gets injured. Well, they're going to be upset, but you say to them, we can't deliberately surrender our momentum.
Yeah.
We can't.
You can go through the facts
what
of
happens
time.
to the teams that do.
Right. You can go through the facts of time. You just mentioned it. Baltimore last year. Oh, what? Kansas City had to play Week 17 last year. Oh, they won. Guess what? They rode that momentum into the playoffs, went to the Super Bowl, even though it was, all over the place as far as comeback wins and everything like that. You'll be able to point to, if you're Sean McDermott, to go, wait, Tom Brady and the New England Patriots went to 97 Super Bowls. They played like Week 17 every time. Like every time. Didn't matter if they had it locked up or a 1 seed or a 2 seed. They always played. They always kept up momentum. There is something about just playing, staying in your routine, staying in game shape, staying battle tested, all of those things. That's where it's a tough balance for a coach here. Mike Tomlin, I tell him to rest him. They're a different team. They're beat up. It's been different. They're a little older in some spots. Okay, they're different. The Bills are a whole different entity in themselves too. And they're not the Steelers with this, a quarterback with, playoff history and all those things as well. So I'm with you, Mike, all the way. I think you ride the momentum. And, you can play the percentages a little bit, right? I mean, you wrote yesterday, okay, Pittsburgh, they're looking good for Cleveland right now, right? In that football game. I don't know what happens with Buffalo and Miami, but I think we can also sit here and just chalk it up and go, I feel pretty good that Baltimore is going to beat Cincinnati. So there you have 2 out of these 4 teams we're talking about that are really set up in a good spot to where, I mean, it'd be shocking to me if either one of those lose. So you can play it a little bit or figure it out a little bit, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think you're right. I mean, if the Browns lose to Mason Rudolph, then they don't belong in the playoffs. If you finish your season with a loss to the Jets and a loss to Mason Rudolph, you don't deserve a spot at the table. I don't care how many wins you have. Oh, we got 10 wins. We should be in. Not if you can't beat the Jets and Mason Rudolph in back-to-back weeks. And, of course, the Mason Rudolph angle means a reunion with Myles Garrett, that ugly incident from last November when Garrett, number 1, removed the helmet of Mason Rudolph, and then number 2, whacked him over the head with it. And it's still amazing to this day that Rudolph didn't suffer a serious injury. That could be something that bubbles up during that game, especially if the Browns are feeling frustrated, if the Steelers are finding a way to beat the Browns on a day where the Browns desperately need to win.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.